in that case is my next guest, John Eastman, former attorney for President Trump. He's also a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute, and he joins us now. John, nice to have you with us. Thank you so much, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on your program.
It is honestly just remarkable what's happening. I want people to get a kind of a brief summary of who you are and what you've been subjected to. You're a former attorney for President Trump. You gave him legal advice in the wake of the 2020 election on how to handle all of the electoral contests going on at the time. And ever since then, the left has tried to destroy you. Give us a sense of how.
Well, I've been the subject of 15 or 16 different actions around the country. I don't give a precise number anymore because there are some out there I don't even know about. I learned a couple of weeks ago that there was one in Rhode Island that was filed against me that I didn't even know about, and I only learned about it when the Court of Appeals up in Boston dismissed it. But
Wow.
obviously, I'm unindicted co-conspirator number 2 in the D.C. action against the president. I'm indicted co-conspirator number 3 in the Georgia action. I've had bar complaints filed against me in the California and in the District of Columbia and also at the U.S. Supreme Court. I had my phone seized by the FBI with an illegal warrant. And that was almost 2 years ago, and they still haven't given my $1,000 phone back to me. I was named in a suit along with Fox News and Rudy Giuliani and the Trumps and a whole bunch of people, and Mark Zuckerberg, who was on the other side of the political aisle, accusing me of being a billionaire oligarch trying to throw the election. This is it's insane. And yet they're getting away with it because so many of these courts are accepting frivolous cases and allowing them to proceed. And even if they get dismissed at the end of the day, it's costing people millions of dollars in legal fees to try and fight against this lawfare.
So the reason they're going after you is because of the legal advice you gave President Trump. I mean, you gave him, you advised him and the White House on what kind of maneuvers they might be able to take in the wake of the 2020 election, and as a result, they're criminalizing that. That is that. Do I have the summary right?
That's the summary. Coming up with legal theories on constitutional interpretation on questions that had never been settled, and advocating for a particular view that I happen to think is the right view, but it's certainly a view that was within the reasonable grounds of advocacy. And my ethical obligation as an attorney is to zealously advocate for my client and my client's position.
Yes.
With any plausible grounds for legal and factual basis. And we had legal and factual basis for everything we did. But that doesn't matter. The law doesn't matter. This is a lawfare to get Trump, to prevent him from getting on the ballot, to advance democracy. We're going to keep people off the ballot who are likely to win. I mean, this is the utter idiocy of what we're dealing with.
The impact on your life has stretched beyond court proceedings, which of course are dominating so much of your time, and I'm certain your finances for that matter. But beyond that, there's also been various organizations that have fired you. You work for a number of organizations. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I reached a settlement with my longtime employer, Chapman University, where I was a tenured law professor, an endowed professorship, and former dean, to retire early. I was basically deplatformed from my visitorship at the University of Colorado. All of my classes were canceled on the eve of the beginning of classes, and I was prohibited from being on campus and speaking. But my longtime affiliation with the Claremont Institute, where I'm a senior fellow and founding director of its public interest law firm, has remained very strongly supportive of me because they understand what we're dealing with. We're confronting an authoritarian government that is demanding that everybody bend the knee to false narratives. This is the 75th anniversary year of the publication of George Orwell's 1984. His analysis was correct. He was only 40 years off on the year. But the government demanding that you not only repeat the lies that they're telling you, but that you come to believe the lies they're telling you. And that's what we're fighting against. It's a very dangerous time, a perilous time in our country. And we need more people to stand up and fight against this, because otherwise we will no longer be in control of our government. We'll cease to be citizens in a free republic, and we become subjects of an increasingly tyrannical government.
John Eastman, we spoke with Josh Hammer of Newsweek recently, and he told us that you had been debanked by the Bank of America and USAA. In other words, your bank accounts have been closed by those banking institutions, and that led us on a fact-finding mission to establish, okay, what's true here. And we reached out as a show. We reached out to USAA in particular and asked them for comment. They didn't respond. We asked subsequently again. They didn't respond. I then, as an editor at the Daily Caller, handed it off to one of my reporters over there, Reagan Reese, and Reagan began digging in and was able to speak to you about this. If you could share with this audience what happened with you and Bank of America and USAA in particular.
Well, in September of last fall, we got a letter from Bank of America saying they've made the unilateral determination not to do business with us, and they closed our accounts. And we were traveling when that letter was sent, and we got it about 3 days before the deadline for getting all of our accounts transferred. So we had to frantically get things moved. And we also had accounts at USAA. My wife's father was a Navy veteran in World War II and Marine veteran in Korea War. And so
wow.
as her child of a veteran, she was able to have accounts. And so we had USAA accounts as well. And then late November, we got notification from USAA that they had, same thing. They had decided not to keep doing business with us and were closing our accounts. And by then we had, kind of shifted over all of our auto payments and all of that stuff to USAA. So we had to shift those to somebody else. And then I saw a news account that USAA initially said that's not true. They didn't do that. So I posted a copy of the letter on my Twitter account to show the people that, yes, in fact, they did do this. And it's created quite a stir because, USAA, Bank of America, you almost expect it. They're such a woke corporation. But USAA and their client base, military veterans and their families, tend to be on the other side of the political aisle from this kind of woke crap. And so it's a huge problem with their customer base. And this thing has gone viral against USAA. People are angry about learning about this. And but with the Bank of America, they give you in the letter, said, if you want more information about this, here's a number to call. And you call the number and you spend a lot of time going through the phone tree. And when you kind of hit, 2 for this and 3 for that, and they finally get to if you've received a letter from us saying we're closing your accounts, here's the additional information. We don't give any additional information. Thank you very much. There's no further appeal. Goodbye. It's a joke. They refuse to give any information. And, I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they decided that federal regulators trying to find out who my transaction were and all of the legal expenses that go into responding to those kind of inquiries is just not worth it for a couple of personal accounts. To give them the benefit of the doubt, that I still wish they would have stood up to that if that was the case instead of being cowardly. But that would have been at least an explanation. But they didn't even give that. And quite the opposite. It's probably that the corporate hierarchy doesn't want to do business with prominent conservatives. And so I've got a lot of people with small banks, private banks that have contacted me saying, we're happy to have your accounts, and so we'll have backup plans if that need arises again. But people need to start being called out on this. When we're starting to politicize our normal day-to-day transactional business that every single person has to engage in, they're trying to make it difficult to hold views contrary to the status quo, and that's not what a free people should be willing to live with. Yes. And we ought to fight back against it.
Sure, yeah, and of course neither company is willing to express why specifically they debanked you, but the obvious answer appears to be political retribution, or at least political pressure to remove you. And when this happens, I agree with you. It's the kind of thing that it should be called out because we should want these companies to hesitate before they trample all over their customers in order to fulfill some sort of cruel political agenda.
Yeah, no, exactly. And their client, look, if we're going to start doing business based on your politics, then people need to know the politics of the companies they're doing business with. And half of the country will take their business elsewhere. And if their shareholders are willing to take that hit on the bottom line to further a political agenda, then at least the shareholders ought to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this ought to be the subject at a shareholder meeting.
Yeah, the USAA surprised me for the same reason it surprised you. I grew up a military kid, and I at one point I actually had insurance with USAA. I enjoyed them as a company. I thought they were perfectly great to work with. But I thought of them the way you did as a patriotic company. Bank of America, I was a lot less surprised about, but USAA, holy cow, what's going on here? And I'm just really disappointed by how all of this has gone. They have decided to go radio silent. They are not responding to requests for comment. They apparently feel no obligation to inform the public as to why they did what they did to you. And now it leaves, as you point out, so many of their account holders and various people online also expressing their discontent with them, and they're just silent in the face of it. I guess they're just hoping this whole story goes away.
Right. Well, I suspect it's not going to go away. I saw a report that several state attorney generals are looking into it on whether they violated any of their state laws. Several state laws have public accommodation statutes that include a political affiliation and political views. So if that's what's going on, these folks might be in some legal trouble as well. This isn't going away, and I think that's a good thing because people need to understand what's going on.
John Eastman, finally, thank you for your time. And before we let you go, I know that you've been fighting it out in California to keep your law license. My understanding is one of the primary reasons you need to do that is, of course, so you make enough money to get by, including for all of these legal battles that the left has subjected you to. Can you give us a sense of what is the status of that, and how damaged financially have you become by all of this?
Well, it cost over $750,000 to defend my bar license in California, and what was one commentator has described as the longest and most expensive bar disciplinary proceeding in history. I think he's probably right about that. And at the end of the day, more than 10 weeks of trial, 128-page opinion that hardly cited any of the evidence we put in. The judge found that I had no evidence for the things I was saying and the advice I was giving. Preposterous. And so the bar court can only recommend disbarment. The California Supreme Court is the only one that has the authority to actually do that. But in the interim, the recommendation triggers an automatic interim suspension of my license. And so that's where it is. Look, if people want to learn more about this, if I can give out my legal defense fund site, we use that as a place to post updates. It's givesendgo.com/Eastman. And people can learn what's going on. We link to articles that seem to get it, but people can donate to help us, or they can send prayers to help us. All of that is available at that site, givesendgo.com/Eastman.
John Eastman, former attorney for President Trump, and now in the thick of it with the American left. John Eastman, thank you very much for your time, sir. Hope we can talk again soon.